Hey everyone, in this episode of Insights for Pros, I'm speaking with Julie Hansen, who is an author, a salesperson, an actress, a trainer, and probably a bunch of other things that we didn't get around to talking about. But she has some real skills and a lot of knowledge about how to show up your best on camera. Don't feel bad if you do not feel natural on camera, and almost nobody does. Even those people who are fantastic and get paid millions and millions of dollars as actors and actresses, they still have to practice. They still don't take, a single take is not what does it for them. So it's not you. You just haven't been given the insights into the skills that you need to know and practice, as it turns out, to make the most out of being on camera, as we are almost every single day. Let's hit that episode right now. Hey, Julie, thanks for being on the show.
Happy to be here, Dan.
It's funny. It's taken us about 2 years to really have a recorded conversation. I'm not entirely sure why that happened, but it's because we were waiting for it to be perfect, I think is what we were going for.
That may be. Things to calm down.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we always thought that, COVID would be done in a week or maybe just next week or the week after that. And here we are.
Here we are.
So when we first ran across each other, I think I found you, but honestly, I don't recall if you found me or because our worlds have collided.
Yes.
As it turns out, we both care about eye contact, among other things, and on how people show up, ourselves included, on camera.
Right.
Which is a skill that, as it turns out, we'll get into it from your perspective, most people didn't have when COVID hit. And most people didn't have any awareness of how to be on camera confidently, let alone at all. The good old days when people were like, hey, you're muted, your camera's not on. It was those early days were tough for a lot of people who were really not expecting that they were going to need to live on camera, and some that really
it was a shock
didn't
for
want to.
Most people, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe I found you, and it's because you wrote a book in 2021 called "Look Me in the Eye," which sounds potentially threatening. Which isn't necessarily bad. You got to get people's attention. And there is, in all seriousness, looking in the eye. And what we're talking about is looking people in the eye through a camera lens, which is very different, as it turns out, from just if we were sitting across from each other doing an in-person interview. That's a very different experience. But how do you convey you through a lens, which is potentially teeny tiny, and get something out of the conversation on the other end? Where you actually do make a connection, which is really what it all comes down to.
Right. I mean, in terms of, we're not talking about that threatening eye contact necessarily, but, that is how we connect with people. That's how we know people are interested in us. They're paying attention. That's how that's one of the components of building a relationship. So it's a vital piece with our communications.
Back in the good old days, maybe not so good old days, when you went in for a job interview, you'd have on your best outfit, whatever that was. It could cost $100. It could be a $10,000 suit, somewhere in between there. But if you don't show up in the expectation of what professional looks like in a situation, then by default, you don't look professional, which is probably not what people are going for.
Right. And I think, as competition increases, people are quickly eliminated from the mix, whether it's for a job or selling. They look for reasons to not use you as opposed to use you because they have so many decisions to make, right?
Yeah, exactly. So why not eliminate some of the reasons why they might kick you off that list and rise to the top. I like to talk to people who have a sort of varied background that's not sort of traditional, like there was a clear path, but you went to college for a certain thing, you graduated for that thing, you went into that business for a specific reason with all the skills that you needed, which maybe that doesn't happen all that often.
Does it happen anymore? I don't know.
You have a background in sales. And pre-COVID, as I understand it, you had decided that you needed a unique skill set, as Liam Neeson said in Taken. I have a unique skill set, which in your case is not potentially hunting down people and tracking them down around. Maybe it is.
I decide.
But you sought out some skills that weren't like your normal skills that a salesperson would go for. What was it that you studied at that point?
Well, I had a career in sales, and I also worked as an actor. And as an actor, you start mostly on stage, right? So you've got live performances, and it's just like live sales or live conferences. You get a feed off your audience, and you have, that you've got your whole body you can use to express yourself.
Right.
And I did that for a couple years, and then I auditioned for on camera role.
Right.
And, I went into that audition and they were like, "Okay, action, look at the camera." And I'm like, I was like a deer in headlights. I'm like, who am I talking to? Like, where are they?
Right.
What can I look away? Can I move? The most awkward experience. And of course, I did not get that part.
Right.
uh, to no one's surprise except mine. Uh, but I learned that what actors do, they're not naturally good on camera. They take classes to learn how to communicate, in front of a camera lens, and to
Right.
actually, make people feel on the other side that they're having a conversation with them. And so I took those classes, and then that helped me, in my acting career. And so when COVID hit and I saw everybody scrambling to get on camera
Right.
and having that deer in the headlights experience, I thought, no one's telling these people how to do this. We're just going, okay, here's all the tools. Now, good luck, do what you did in person. And that is
Right.
not how you communicate well on video. That was true day one of COVID, and that's true today. And yet there's a lot of people that just have sort of ignored the fact that it's a different medium, and people experience you differently on their screen because of the way the camera distorts or magnifies certain things, the fact that
Yeah.
we only see, you know 10% of your body,
Right.
and that has to communicate everything, right? You can't
Yep.
we don't know if you're looking off in space. We don't know that you're still engaged with this. You're just looking at a picture on a desk. You have broken that connection when you're on camera with your audience.
Yeah. And when did you take your on camera courses?
Oh gosh, it's probably I took them, gosh, when I was acting probably 15, 20 years ago. And throughout my career, I take refreshers because it's like any communication skill. Like if you don't use it, it doesn't, it kind of gets rusty.
What I like about your book is that it's, as an author myself, it can be difficult to, like, where's that line between too much information for most people and not enough, and then how do you make it actionable, or whatever buzz phrase you want to use if you don't like actionable, but how do you make it pragmatic and practical, I guess is probably the
Right,
better way
right.
to talk about it.
Well, and I worked with, 1,000 salespeople, and so I heard their problems with, well, yeah, I know I'm supposed to look at the camera, but how do I read people's body language, and what does it mean? And so I knew all the things that people were struggling with, and I just tried to put them in the book as and answer those questions.
I don't think you put it quite this way in the book, but essentially, somebody told me this a couple of years ago that the energy that you need to put through, like if you're on a stage, you're a keynote presenter, you're doing
Mm.
training, you're doing sales, whatever, the energy transfer, not to get too woo woo about this, but there is an energy that you're transferring and getting back from people in a situation where you're in
Absolutely.
person, you can see them. But to get the same energy through a lens, like physically, if it was in person, you have a big space where energy can flow. If it's through a camera, you have a teeny tiny little space that, as it turns out, takes more energy to push through, to be able to convey that energy, to make it feel like you're alive and interested.
Yes, yes.
It doesn't matter which side of the lens you're on at that point.
Right. Well, that is so true, and that's one of the biggest problems I address in the book is that, the camera takes away a big chunk of that natural energy. It takes all that physical energy that you bring, and add to that, most people, when they're on video or they're on a virtual call or meeting, are seated, which is a very low energy position. And
Yep.
so you have this just dearth of energy, and it's just, it's a wonder anybody pays attention. It's just, there's and our, when you're not energetic, your face is not expressive, your voice gets kind of low, and people also make the mistake of equating being comfortable with being natural on video.
So I think one of the things that that we've certainly seen at Plexicam. So we launched first November, December 2020, and
Very timely.
there's been what I've seen has been several waves of, initially everybody was deer in the headlights. Most people were deer in the headlights. They had no idea what to do. To me, there's been several waves. So there's that initial wave of I need to survive, basically, and that meant how do I even use Zoom, since a lot of people hadn't heard of Zoom.
Right.
Where is my camera? Do I even have a camera?
Yeah.
uh, if I don't, how much do I have to spend in the early days, which was twice as much as you should have for webcams because they're in short supply?
Yeah. Right.
Like, what's the most common thing that you see now that maybe shocks you a little bit that still hasn't really been on people's radar as a thing that they
Oh.
should care about?
Oh my gosh. Well, I agree with you that the bar is being raised, but it's being raised a lot slower than I thought it would.
Okay,
Because, like you said, most people initially were just concerned about, the technology and the platform and, okay, go. And now, and what tool is going to help me do this? As you said, the evolution is people who want to get better, who see the value in it, invest in resources to do that. But I am truly just shocked by the number of people and, who show up on virtual sales calls who still don't, they aren't framed correctly.
yeah,
Uh, they they look like they're either, looking down at you, or there's, it's like this much space above their head, and
right,
they're this, the point of being on camera is to use this space to maximize it, and everything in it should be purposeful and allow people to see your eyes and your expression. Relationship experts say we should be making eye contact about 70% of the time. Now that's in person. So
right,
not just the lack of eye contact, but the lack of enough eye contact or eye
right,
contact at the right times. There's certain
yeah,
times as people that are it's really vital that we make eye contact. And I think there's a lot of things that are challenging about being on camera, but there's also some really good benefits. And one of those is that you could be talking to a large group of people, but everyone will feel like you're talking directly to them if you look at the camera. Right? And that's really huge because everybody's having their own personal relationship with you. And we are not using that skill to our advantage.
yeah. I think there's, and then there's so much that we could talk about. I mean, but from the book, one of the things that I really like that makes it practical, who doesn't like cheats? Just tell me exactly what to do, or more
Right.
importantly, maybe what not to do. Is there a two or three that we might pull out to recommend to people that if you're not doing anything, you haven't done anything really to try to build your skills on camera, what is something that would move you a little bit farther down that path, so then you can really take more advantage of this medium?
Looking at the camera is the biggest cheat, right? That's
Yeah,
going to make people feel like they're talking to you. And I always say just start by just picking one certain behavior that you're always going to look at the camera when somebody is when you ask a question, always look at the camera. Like start
yep,
training yourself to do that. The other cheat is that, actors know that, this is their stage. So everything in here should support what you're saying. And that includes your face. And what actors know is that, you know, you have to sort of warm up those muscles to be as expressive as you can. We have to be actually more expressive on video. And I don't mean in a phony way. I just many of us are just not, we just haven't energized our face. We have to sort of reconnect to, why we're passionate about what we're talking about or how we want our audience to feel. But it has to connect to our facial muscles. And so we have to warm that up. That and then the how we use our body language, the gestures. There's actually studies that show seeing someone's hands can actually, build trust. And you don't see a lot of hands on video, or if you do, you see a lot of fast, jerky movement, which is distracting. And so, as opposed to being very purposeful and, we're going to talk about two things today, using this space to communicate and support what you're saying.
yeah. I think actually one of the big advantages of being on camera is it's very easy to hit record and rehearse. I mean, it's much more difficult to rehearse presenting on a huge stage unless you're on a huge stage in a paying gig. Because when else would that would that
Right, right.
happen?
Yeah, you have your setup, and so that yeah, and if you keep that consistent, then that part is done. You don't have to reset your stage every time or go to a new stage.
I do calls all the time with Plexicam clients on where should my camera be and should it be high or low? And as you say, typically a little high and angled down, perhaps that's like the key to good selfies, or so
Mhm.
I hear. Um, and by just being able to hit record, you can see for yourself. If you're being honest with yourself, anyhow, you can see for
It's
yourself.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's very hard for people, and I get this. Like, I never wanted to see my own recordings, and all you can see is like all your flaws. It's like, oh my god.
Right. Yeah.
And we often need that outside person to tell us, what needs to be done. I think it's necessary to often get that outside support to get that perspective that we don't have.
So I wanted to say, and I didn't tell you this before, I was thrilled that one of the things you recommended people do to raise their energy was to look at Dr. Seuss and read it
Fox
out
and
loud. I believe and if you haven't read Fox and Socks, I found that early
been a
on.
while.
I knew Cat in the Hat and some of the really best known Dr. Seuss,
Yeah, I
but
don't know
once I
if I
had
read that
kids,
one.
it's it is so full of tongue twisters. It is ridiculous. So if you try to enunciate everything and read this out loud, it is super hard. It's hilarious too because it's Dr.
It's a
Seuss.
great
And
yeah, and your kids love it. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, to your point, like, I give a lot of exercises and practice to get that energy up and also to warm up those vocal muscles, our mouth and our eyes, and, so we can communicate our best, because what you don't wanna do on camera is be thinking about what you should be doing. Right? You wanna get everything going, and so you can think about, your audience. That's what they're gonna feel. The book is really about how do we develop this, um, muscle memory with these skills, like we have our muscle memory for presenting in person, but that didn't happen naturally either. So it's really important to develop that muscle memory so that you can be at your very best and be focused on your audience, which is ultimately what they're gonna feel.
yeah. So we're about to run out of time. So and there's a ton more that we could talk about. Who do you normally help? Is it always salespeople, or is it a broader world?
Yeah, it's a much broader world. I have a sales background, so that's salespeople who come to me often. Anyone who has to communicate virtually for business, for relationships, um, do a lot with telehealth. I do a lot with leaders, that have to communicate to their troops, and in a way that motivates them and makes them feel important. So that's a certain skill. So I work with them on like virtual presence, virtual executive presence, which is a whole another level to what we're talking about here today. But yeah, anybody, teams or individuals, and so I do workshops, and then I also have for individuals. I have a on-demand course. It's called the Selling on Video Masterclass. But whether you're a salesperson or not, it really is goes through all the skills that I demonstrate. Um, how to look at the camera, how to read body language, how to frame yourself, and gives you some exercises and some self evaluation sheets to help you get better.
I'd love to learn. Maybe I'll ask you for some access to your into your courses, not to monopolize our
Sure,
relationship, but if you
absolutely.
believe them, so I think the last time I interviewed Dan Pink was when he was doing "To Sell Is Human." So if you
Mm,
believe that line, we're all in sales, we're all in marketing. You could apply that to almost anything. But uh,
exactly. You're
I'm
trying
a
to
big believer
influence
that
somebody, you're trying to, influence, um, whether you're influencing your husband to go to a certain restaurant, like we always do some kind of sales.
right, yeah, yeah. And why not? For me, why not learn from people who are experts in sort of a broader field that can be applied to unique situations instead of just a much smaller concentration, which to me is potentially dangerous. I don't. That might just be me.
No, I agree. Absolutely.
All right. So we were about to run out of time. So there will be show notes that tell people how to get a hold of you. JulieHanson.live is one of them. I'll have links in the show notes. I'm so glad that we finally had a chance to chat on camera, with record
Yes.
hit. Um,
Yeah.
we should maybe have it happen sooner than 2 years from now that we next talk.
I think so. There's still a lot more to talk about on this subject, so,
Yeah,
happy
exactly.
to revisit this anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Julie.
My pleasure. Thanks,
All
Dan.
right. Bye.
Bye.